We're finally in the home stretch. Welcome back to the Magic Draft Review, where we are going to be looking at each of the cards in Modern Horizons 3 play boosters and discussing whether or not they're going to be good to pick in draft. Basically, what we're going to be trying to do here is provide a letter grade that indicates the overall power level of the card, along with sort of how likely you are to pick it in a pack, as a sort of like general condensed version of, is this a good first pick and can you build around this to some effect. We're going to be talking about each card and what it does, discussing interesting combos and synergies and general like options and value, trying to point out anything about the card that might be a little easily missable. As a reminder of our grading system, an S is an absolute bomb that is super good and you're likely to splash for. An A is something that's incredibly good in your colors and is pretty likely to win you the game. So you're pretty likely to take it as long as it's in your general game plan. I'd say very likely to take it. A B is something where it is always providing you with good advantage, generally a really reliable workhorse card, or it's a combo where it's a little bit difficult to perform, but if you do perform it, you're going to be in very good shape. So it's kind of in that space where it's generally just almost always a good card. You're fairly happy to pick it. C's are bread and butter. You're going to be always using these types of cards. There's going to be a lot of them in your draft decks. D's are the more like difficult cards that are frequently going to be the last card in your hand when you die. And if you can, you will avoid picking these. They are basically something, they're the draft chaff, they're the filler, they're something that's not really going to help out quite so much for you, and you're pretty unlikely to pick it. They might also include some very unique combos where it's like, oh, if I have A and B and C, and also D, then maybe I can make this thing work and do like a little bit. But it's not necessarily going to be the type of card that you want to pick commonly because it's very likely to trap you into drafting badly. Finally, F, these cards are mostly unplayable. They frequently do not provide a lot of value. If they do create some kind of combo, that combo is very hard to reach and probably won't win you the game if you play it. So yeah, there are a couple of F cards in the set. We've gone through most of them. Now that we're into the multicolors, things are going to get a little bit more wild. There's some really interesting signpost cards, absolute bombs. I think the only card that I am actually ranking just a solid S is right here. And on top of that, there's also going to be some designs that we are going to call into question because they're a little bit ridiculous. So here we go. Let's jump into it. I'm going to do the colorful cards first. We're going to do the colors as well. There might be a break depending on how long this video ends up being, or I might just go for the entire thing and this will be like 3-hour runtime. You'll know which is which. I sure don't. All right, here we go. Starting off with Abstruse Appropriation. 2 white-black for a Devoid, which is colorless card. It is an instant. It exiles target non-land permanent. You can cast that card for as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend colorless mana, as though it were a mana of any color to cast that spell. So if you have white, black, and colorless, then you can use this card to pay for, get rid of a card, and then just cast it later anytime you want. So it's a steal a card effect, which generally those are reasonably strong, but it's a little bit slow and it's a little bit awkward. It's removal at instant speed, and then after you remove whatever the thing is, you get to play that thing, which if it happens to be your opponent's bomb, that's just absolutely backbreaking. This is a card that can win you the game and seems pretty likely to be something that you can reach for. Like it's effectively something along the lines of a Consuming Ashes, which was one of the strongest removals in the set in the previous format, Outlaws of Thunder Junction. The main thing that I think is really important to note about this card in Arena, well, I mean, aside from the fact that it's just generally good, is that it's pretty demoralizing. So, like, because this is something where it's like, oh yeah, your opponent played a really good card, you removed it, now they know that you can cast it if you have the colorless mana. You might get a lot of instant concedes out of this, just because, like, people generally see this type of thing, they think, oh no, like, I don't want to play against my own cards. And that does tend to up the win rate of these just a little bit. I give this card an A-. I think it's excellent. It's definitely doing what it's supposed to do as a removal card, and then the upside is just super fantastic, and like you can generally rely on like being able to get the best card in your opponent's deck, which is just lovely. Arna Arnaketarud, Sky Captain, 2 white, blue, black. So 3 colors. 3-color decks are going to be a little bit easier in this format than usual, just because there's so many tap lands, and a lot of the tap lands are lands that will provide you with value because they are like also other types of spells. You can play some kind of like wonky stuff a little bit more commonly. There's some good like common fetch lands that care about colorful stuff. Being in 3 colors does make it much harder to get colorless mana because you have to like sort of do some other things around that, but it's fairly reasonable to fix. So it's something that's going to be like a consideration in how difficult it is to cast a card, but not necessarily a reason to just not pick that card. Flying lifelink 4/4, ward discard a card, which is pretty sick. I think this just works basically every time and gives you card advantage whenever your opponent is trying to kill it. 4/4 flying lifelink is already pretty disgusting because this is something that just wins a lot of board states. It is very capable of flying over for the damage that you need. The lifelink is super helpful, and you're really, really pleased with that. And then finally, it has whenever a modified creature you control attacks, double the number of each kind of counter on it. Then for each non-token permanent attached to it, you create a token that's a copy of that permanent attached to that creature. So you get to copy the auras that you have put on top of your stuff, as well as the equipment that you put on top of your stuff, which gets really, really awkward in some aspects. One of the themes that we're going to be like generally saying is, I'm so glad I'm not playing this on paper. And this is a really strong example of that. So you're really looking for like a lot of onboard value, but when you're playing this into an attack, you tend to feel pretty good about the onboard value because the modify ability is probably going to trigger on something that isn't Arnaketarud and is fairly likely to already be down on the board. So I would say that this has fairly immediate onboard impact if your opponent is tapped out, which is something that you are really looking for. The ward is absolutely brutal and is going to lead to card advantage all on its own, and the creature on its own is doing just great. So all of this is just an A card. It's great. It's doing everything it needs to do. It's almost never going to be bad. You kind of want to reach for it because it's just like a great bomb to find in a pack, and overall this is like a super, super strong choice. We're leaving the lands for last. They're going to be in a separate video, I believe. Brea, Ethereum Shaper, is next. White, blue, black, red. Okay, 4 colors, which, I mean, already kind of better be the best card ever because you are really having to reach in order to play this, and you're almost never playing this on, like, turn 4. When it enters the battlefield, you create 2 1/1 blue Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying. A 4/4 with 2 1/1s is definitely not a bad stat line. That's 6 stats, and 2 of them are a little bit evasive. You can pay 2 and sacrifice 2 artifacts to choose one. Brea deals 3 damage to a player or planeswalker. So not a creature, but it can kill planeswalkers, which is, I mean, pretty mid, not necessarily likely to do much. Target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn. Okay, that's better, because now you can actually kill the creature, and also you can kill bigger creatures, or you gain 5 life. Alright, so 4/4 on, like, turn 6-ish. The 2 Thopters is kind of helpful. You're also trying to fix for colorless in this format, so like Brea is going to be like even harder to deal with and actively play. And I think the ability, like sacrificing your Thopters to get this kind of effect is reasonably bad on rate, unless you have other things that are working in your favor, like you're generating a ton of artifact tokens somehow. This is like one of the weirdest like Ds that I can give, considering the like raw amount of value on this card if you play it on turn 4, but like I think most of the time building towards it is just going to break your deck, and that's something that you're not really necessarily looking for. It's nice that it's an artifact creature itself, so you can like sack it. That's something I don't think I noticed when I was evaluating the card originally, but overall I think it's just not quite there as far as what it's looking for. Kaith, Famed Machinist. 4 mana 3/3 and a 1/1, or it becomes a 4 mana 4/4 because it's got Fabricate. Other non-token creatures you control also have Fabricate, so all of your creatures are 1 bigger, or you are making a bunch of tokens for sacrifice decks. Lovely. The tokens are also artifacts, which helps with affinity, so that's kind of neat. It's in blue, red, and white, and 2 tap, choose 1. You can either populate, which if you're it will create a copy of any number of tokens that you want to choose, whether that's +1/+1 counters, any number of counters you want to choose, whether that's +1/+1 counters, energy counters, anything along those lines, you can create extras. And then like Proliferate is create a copy of a token creature, I believe. So yeah, both of those are basically just make more things because Famed Machinist is making more things. Okay, this is probably going to run actually in the sea territory, despite being like kind of a signpost card for these colors. I'd say that one of the things that's going on here is that when you're in blue, red, and white, you're going to be looking for a lot of energy synergy because all three of those colors are going to have a lot of energy available. So they're not necessarily going to be looking quite as much towards like artifact stuff or anything that's going to be like a little bit more along those lines. And they're also not looking for sacrifice synergy, which is one of the places where I do think this is particularly strong. I think the Fabricate is not doing as much in those colors as you would like. It does lead to you playing a lot of extra stuff on rate, but because you have to like kind of reach a little bit to get here, you might be better off just playing a blue-red deck or a red-white deck, as opposed to trying to get like Kaith as a splash in. So, I mean, if you've really got the mana for it, you definitely feel good about it. It starts to get much more closer to a B there, but I actually think I put this at a C. I just don't think it's easy enough to cast for the amount of things that it's doing, and I think that the 2 and tap basically sacrifices the one thing that it's got going for it, which is that it's a pretty good creature on board in order to achieve a pretty minor effect. Proliferate is lovely, you certainly want it, but you don't want to tap your best blocker to get it going. So yeah, I think it's just not quite there. Conduit Goblin, red and a white for a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy counters. Delicious. A lot of 2/2s for 2 that give you 2 energy counters. At the beginning of combat, on your turn, you can pay an energy. If you do, another creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. Hey, this one's actually kind of neat. So energy for haste and +1/+0 is one of the stronger things that you can spend energy on in this format. If you are going for an aggressive red-white deck, you're going to get a decent amount of energy, and having haste and a +1/+0 bonus is just so strong. There's some really good combos here. We're going to talk about one of them in the future with like free haste stuff, and you can kind of rely on those combos because there's multiple ways to trigger them. But having just a common creature that actually does that really kind of feels like something that's just fairly effective in terms of what it's doing. I'm going to give this card like a B-. I think it is just a great card on rate. You do have to play like a pretty solid red-white deck to build it, and that is like, you know, that's a bit of a reach. But overall, I'd say that, yeah, this is something where you're pretty likely to be able to play this card, and you might even be pretty likely to play it on 2. And basically anytime it's out, it's creating so many like problems for your opponent on tempo and like potential threats and potential bombs that like I think you can do some really interesting things with it. It kind of has to get removed, which is, yeah, good stuff. Corum, the Undertaker. 1 black, red, green for a 0/5 with +X/+0, where X is the greatest power among creature cards on all graveyards. So looking at that stat line, we're not too impressed because we're looking at probably something that like averages out to a 3/5, but can be a 0/5, can be like a 7/5, but most of the time it's just going to be like not extremely huge for being a 4-cost creature in 3 colors. Whenever it attacks, each player mills a card. During each of your turns, you can play a land and cast a spell from among creature cards and graveyards that were put there from libraries this turn. I'd say the chance of doing both of these is actually like not very low. And then like, yeah, this is something where like you're actually getting like a pretty significant amount of value out of this card if it sticks. So like you are looking for onboard value more than you're looking for offboard value, but a 0/5 is something that is pretty likely to live to at least the next turn and be able to attack. I'm going to give this card a B-. I think it's kind of great late when everyone's out of gas. I think it's really good when you play it on turn 4, which is not the easiest thing in the world, but it is something that you can potentially do, especially when you're in green. And overall, this seems like something where it is just like the amount of like stuff that it's doing can get really out of control, just in terms of like the overall card advantage of it, while it also trades pretty efficaciously up to like turn 7 when the Eldrazi start coming down. So yeah, pretty interesting stuff. Cranial Ram, black-red living weapon. Equipped creature gets +X/+1, where X is the number of artifacts you control, and you can equip this for 2. I think this is one of those commons that I've seen a lot of lists post as like one of the stronger commons in the set. I'm not convinced on it yet. I have this at a C+ at the moment, and I'm kind of thinking about like maybe B- under some circumstances. So it is a creature, which is nice, and it is an artifact, so it's always going to be +1/+1, which is an important thing to note because that does mean that you're getting a decent amount of value out of it. We've seen from cards like Treasure Pan that being able to repeatedly equip a +1/+1 bonus can be kind of effective. Equipment is always kind of okay with this. So yeah, it's a lot of damage potentially, but you do have to build a little bit of affinity. It's fairly good on flyers. The extra point of health is fairly helpful for your creatures. And like, I think that artifact only decks don't have as much support as it feels like they do in this set. So to that extent, it feels like a little bit of a trap. But I mean, in black, it's definitely a possible B-. I think it's just like, it's a lot too ask for to get the artifacts to really get this going, but it's never not providing you with like some amount of value. So I feel pretty okay about this as both a creature and an artifact. The equip is just the thing that really like gives me a bit of pause because 2 cost to equip is just a little slow for what you're trying to get out of it. If what you're trying to get out of it is +5/+1, 2 cost is probably about the right cost, but yeah, you do have to have like evasive creatures, menace creatures, something else going on there to kind of make it work. All right, Cursed Wombat, black green. Man, do I still leave that as C+? No, I think it's a B-. I think it is. I think it is just good enough because that artifact again applies the +1/+1, even when you don't have other artifacts. All right, unless it says other artifacts you control. Nope. Okay, we're good. Cursed Wombat. This is a 2/3. Let's make sure we got this in frame. Not quite. Hold on a second. Okay, so black-green for a 2/3. Already not too bad. 2 black-green to adapt 2. You put 2 +1/+1 counters on it, and notably it's going to be 3 because permanents you control have whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on this permanent, put an additional +1/+1 counter on it. This ability triggers only once each turn. So black-green for a 2/3, that's pretty good on rate. On turn 4, you turn it into a 5/6. That's also pretty good on rate. So if this card lives long enough, I think it's going to feel pretty okay. This plays really well with your combat trick, which is get a +1/+1 counter and then deal damage equal to like X, where it's modified creatures. I'd say that is something where like you have a lot of other effects that can apply +1/+1 counters, and those are going to be pretty solid if the Wombat stays. So as a 2-drop, it kind of passes the smell test for sure. As a just sort of like general like in the 4-drop slot, I'd say it's a little bit less effective. Like 5/6 is not. You've already played this creature, so turning it into a 5/6 is great, but it's maybe you'll want to do something else on turn 4. Mostly, though, I think this is just a solid B-. It's a good stat line. The adapt is a little expensive, but the upside is really, really solid, and the creature that you get out of the adapt is extremely useful. So I'd say this like works pretty well with just about everything, and you're going to feel pretty fine if you're playing this in black-green. Cyclops. Superconductor. 1 blue-red. Prowess 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy, which is absolutely delicious. When it dies, you can pay 3 energy, and if you do, Cyclops Superconductor deals damage equal to its power to any target. I'm back and forth on this card a little bit, but I am putting it at a... 1 second. I'm putting it at a C+. So yeah, the prowess here is really nice. The ability to get all of this energy really early is pretty good, and I'd say that like, you know, the ability to kind of combat trick your opponent, this does function as a 3/3 pretty frequently, and the energy ability on it, when it dies, does mean that you can kind of clear out an early board without too much difficulty. You can do something like, you know, attack in, maybe play like a cheap enchantment or something first, and then when it dies you can just kill 2 different creatures or a large creature, and then there's just like a lot of like potential ways to make that a little bit bigger, a little bit better. Those are things you don't want to invest too steeply in. Sometimes you might even just want to save the energy, but I would say overall this card's providing you with a decent amount of little bits of value. It's just that 2/2 body is not always the perfect advantage on board, and sometimes you just don't have the prowess. But overall, I'd say this is pretty good for blue and cares about all of those like blue card draw, gain energy things. So doesn't feel terribly bad, and there's plenty to do with it that you can really play around with. Brain Surge, tune the narrative. Lots of neat stuff like that. So yeah, I put it a C plus. I don't think it's amazing, but I do think it is a good slot filler. Disa, the Restless, 2 black, red, green, 5/6. All right, that's a pretty okay body for 5, but not like ridiculous. Whenever a Lurgoyf permanent is put into your graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, put it on the battlefield. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a Tarmogoyf token. Okay. So yeah, that's an interesting one. I'm not sure what a Tarmogoyf token qualifies as. Is it just like another creature? So it doesn't actually say anywhere. Is the Tarmogoyf token like out there? It must be like an actual like 0/1 that creates other things. I had this card fairly low because I think it's a pretty difficult 5/6 to play, and then when you play it, it's reasonably likely that your opponent might eventually have something to trade with it. But yeah, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you get a free creature. That probably puts it up to like a C minus. I think it's a lot to ask for a type of token that you're maybe not really all that excited about. There are some potentials for this card to like sort of get pretty out of control. The Tarmogoyfs can, I believe, all function based on how many different types of things you have in your graveyard. So that's another thing that you have to build around. But I do think like the tokens themselves could be potentially quite good. But the fact that you have to kind of get through while playing this card, and the fact that it's like, I don't know, the general like colors that you're required to play for this, I feel like this is not quite doing what you want it to. There's not that many like Tarmogoyfs in the set. I think there's one Lurgoyf that I can think of, the black one. And as far as I know, that's about it. So yeah, I think this has fairly low synergy. I'm gonna give it like a D plus. I think it's just it's a little too awkward most of the time. But yeah, well, we'll see about that one. Drowner of Truth is a land. We'll talk about that one later. Emissary of Soulfire. So, 1 white blue for a 1/4 that when it enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy. So, 3 for 3, generally still kind of the thing that energy is doing. You can pay 2 energy to put an exalted counter on target creature you control. Activate this only as a sorcery. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each instance of exalted among permanents you control. Okay, so there's a little bit on rate. 1/4 is not like an amazing creature to be playing on turn 3. The exalted counter is kind of nice and grants the modified ability, which is important to note, while also leaving like some energy available for you. So you actually get like at least 1 energy if you just put 1 exalted counter on a creature. So that's kind of cool, but it is potentially like not. Exalted is something where you need a lot of creatures down at once. And if you're putting on this on the Emissary of Soulfire itself, then it just becomes a 2/5 on attack, which that doesn't feel particularly useful, particularly since the card does not have Vigilance or anything along those lines. It's a little bit sticky, but not very much. It still dies to all of the red removal. It's pretty good with flyers. If you're giving a flyer that exalted token, then that's a card that's going to be attacking pretty consistently. And it might be okay with menace cards or other things that have like a little bit of evasion. I'd say this is overall like a pretty efficient use of energy. If you have like up to 4 energy and you play an emissary and you get 2 different exalted tokens, then that creates a much larger problem and it starts to get like a little bit more powerful overall. But I would say that you generally only pick this if you're in energy and not otherwise. So it's probably a D plus. Expanding Ooze. 1 black green for a 3/3. Has adapt once, you can make it into a 4/4, and whenever it attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on target modified creature that you control. Okay, so this one gives you +1/+1 counters, which is pretty excellent. It's basically always attacking as a 4/4, which is not the worst. You can certainly basically hit with this consistently. Since you're playing it on 3 and then attacking on 4 for with a 4/4, it's pretty likely to be big enough to actually activate that ability where it puts +1/+1 counter on another creature more often than you might. Oh, actually, it can activate on itself. I kind of missed that. Okay, so yeah, that actually does change my rating of it a little bit. So yeah, it goes from a 4/4 to a 5/5 on turn 4. That's really good on rate. It can die to red removal, but not after it's attacked for the first time. Unless you are like giving it haste or something, because you do have to actually pay for the adapt. I would probably put this at like a C plus to B minus. B minus, I think. Yeah, is just good enough on rate for what it's doing, and like it's really kind of helping spiral the game out of control, particularly if the board is empty. So it's good in the mid game when it's played, and it's good in the late game when everybody's kind of just out of stuff. It's the card you play that you actually kill your opponent with. Both those things seem pretty nice, and the other thing is that it has a lot of synergy with all the other stuff that cares about having +1/+1 counters placed on it. You want to be able to trigger that stuff. A lot of it's really powerful, like Emperor of Bones, but yeah, that's something that I think this card really synergizes very well with. So yeah, this one's gone up in my estimation by quite a bit. I'm going to put it at a B minus. All right. Expressive Iteration. This one... Oh, I don't have a grade on this one. Blue and a red. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand. Put one of them on the bottom of your library. And exile one of them. You can play the exiled card this turn. So blue-red to draw 3 cards, or draw 2 cards, and also scry 1, effectively. Something like that. So you get 3 cards. You have to play one of them or you don't get the card advantage. But at the very least, this card is paying for itself. I believe it activates the draw 3 effect because the card you put in your hand does count as a draw. I could be wrong about that, but I'm fairly certain that that does in fact qualify. And then beyond that, like the bottom of the library is also pretty helpful for sorting out some things. This seems like a really good thing to be doing in blue-red if you're trying to play any type of control. It feels like something that you're pretty fine playing at any stage in the game, whether it's... you might not want to play it early if you're playing like aggressive, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be extremely useful late. So yeah, overall I'd say this is pretty good. I'd give this a B minus. Faithful Watchdog. Okay. It's 3/3 Vigilance, which is to say it's a Vigilance creature that enters the battlefield with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. And it's green-white. This is still pretty good. I believe this card has existed for a while now. I could be wrong about that. But overall, it's just providing you with a lot. First off, 2 mana 3/3, which is great if you can actually play it on turn 2, which I would say that you are capable of doing. There's a decent amount of stuff that can potentially do this. You might have to pay 3 life to do so, since a lot of the like lands that you would play for this might require that. Although the tap lands don't do that. Yeah, it's a little bit tricky to play on 2, but even then, like, as a 3/3 Vigilance on 3, you feel pretty good, particularly if you can play another trick a little bit later, or something along those lines. It proliferates really well. It's a modified creature automatically. It behaves really well with all of the, like, different cards in the set that care about increasing power and toughness in weird ways. One of the, like, weird examples is the Bestow Elk. Turns this card into a 6/6 because you can pay 1 and a green to give the elk as a bestow to Faithful Watchdog. That makes it a 3/3 with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. Something really important to note about a lot of modified creatures: don't put your elk bestow on anything that has tokens on it. If it's the enemy's stuff, rather. So yeah, this is pretty good. This is definitely a solid B. I think it's just a perfect curve filler at 2, and if you're playing green-white, you're probably going to have aggressive creature strategies in general. And then, yeah, it's got a little bit of potential to go crazy late with, like, some kind of modified shenanigans. I wouldn't say it's huge. Genku Future Shaper, 2 white blue. Whenever another non-token 2 white blue for a 2/5 Moonfolk Wizard. Whenever another non-token permanent you control leaves the battlefield, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn, and create a creature token with those characteristics. A 2/2 white Fox with Vigilance, a 1/2 blue Moonfolk with Flying, a 1/1 black Rat with Lifelink, and 3 white blue you can put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control as a little bonus for you. Just a little bit of extra. Okay, so yeah. This one's pretty solid. It's a 4-cost card with 5 health, which is a problem for your opponent because this card has to die. If anything else on your board dies, you just get a pretty decent unit back. The bear is probably the most important thing, the bear in this case being a fox. But the rat can be kind of nice. I would say that both the rat and the Moonfolk are a little more underwhelming tokens. Both of them can get there in different ways, but they aren't like quite as exciting. And yeah, you know, like overall, this is like pretty interesting. It creates a lot of different creatures, and then man, that 5 cost ability is really, really nice as a mana sink. Like, I think it's just something where if you don't have anything else to do, you can do something that really just wins games over time. So awesome card, supports all of them. I love that it's creating all those foxes, rats, and moon folks. The future. It's wonderful. Okay, happy Pride. Okay, Golden Tail Trainer. 1 green white aura and equipment spells you cast cost X less to cast, where X is Golden Tail Trainer's power. When Golden Tail Trainer attacks, other modified creatures you control get +X until end of turn, where X is Golden Tail Trainer's power. So X is usually 1, but it's making auras cheaper, so the idea is you play an aura on it, that makes it bigger, and then after that it's going to continue to make auras cheaper, and everything else is also going to get bigger at the same time, assuming it has an aura on it. Okay, so you might already see the problem here. This card is hyper specific, and it needs at least 2 more cards to get going. You've got a pretty bad stat line, 3 for a 1/3. If you put an aura on something, then it's still not really giving any sort of bonus for the aura. It makes the aura cheaper, which is nice, but you still have to have other creatures be modified, which means you either need those creatures to have +1/+1 counters on them, or you need them to have more auras on them. That means you have to build the deck almost entirely around auras, which most drafters can tell you, not usually a good idea. So yeah, this is something where it's really, really specific, it's not doing a lot, and like the fact that it's so bad to play just on its own means that it's a solid D, like maybe a D-. It's quite terrible, and it's going to be pack filler. Like, it's going to be something that you don't want in your deck most of the time. Horrid Shadow Spinner. Activates mill and selects cards is what I have noted here. 3 cost for a 2/3 lifelink. Whenever Horrid Shadow Spinner attacks, you may draw cards equal to its power. If you do, discard that many cards. This card was a workhorse in my pre-release deck. Okay, so 2/3 lifelink means it can stabilize things. Notably, the thing that's really powerful about it is whenever it attacks, it triggers the draw 3 effect. So if you are playing around with the Amass Zombies card, or with anything else that cares about drawing 3 to activate, this is a really, really solid way to sort of get that kind of synergy. And even when that's not happening, it's a 2/3 lifelink that allows you to get into your next land, get into your next removal card, get into whatever card you need to like deal with a particular problem, and it is also stabilizing you on board, which is awesome. It needs to be backed up with removal sometimes, but if you're in black, you have some hard removal, and if you're in blue, you have some pretty good bounce. So you'll be gambling a little bit on the attack to get the effect, but even then the card is doing basically everything you want it to. I give this card a B-. Imskir Iron Eater, 6 black red, affinity for artifacts, so costs less for each artifact you control. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you draw X cards and you lose X life, where X is half the number of artifacts you control. Rounded down. Rounded down is important because that means that if you have 1 artifact, then this is a 7 mana 5/5 that does not draw you a card. But I would say that reasonably, this is a closer to a 6 or 5 mana 5/5 that draws you a card. Like, you're pretty likely to get 2 to 3 artifacts out, and that will make the card like basically playable. I wouldn't say that it's terribly hard to get that many artifacts down, and like once you do get that going, you start to feel pretty good about it. Once you get up to 4 artifacts, this is at a 4 mana 5/5, draw 2, which is exceptionally good, like does exactly what you want it to do. In none of these circumstances is it necessarily spiraling the game out of control. The 3 in a red ability is sack an artifact, deals damage equal to the sacrificed artifact's mana value to any target, which is something that can start removing things but will cost you cards that you probably do actually want on the board. So I think that it's a flexible way to like reach a little bit, but overall this card isn't getting better than like a B+. It is doing great things. I'd actually take it down to a B just because, like, the scenario where you only have 1 artifact is so bad. So, yeah, something to keep in mind because you will be building around it pretty commonly. But I would say while it's bread and butter for the deck, it is not always going to win the game on its own. All right, it's that time. Invert polarity. Blue, red, choose target spell, then flip a coin. If you win the flip, you gain control of that spell, and you can choose new targets for it. If you lose the flip, counter that spell. Keep in mind this includes like creature spells, so you can just steal an opponent's creature with this if you win a coin flip. This is So one of the things we're going to be seeing in these multicolor designs are some of the weirdest and most complicated designs that Magic has had in quite a while. Like, there's a lot going on in this set. There's like counters of all sorts of different types. There's some really parasitic mechanics. There's a lot of different mechanics that are all like combining together in really weird ways. There's a lot of cards where the designs are like sort of referring back to this like old nostalgia Magic that was like, like restricted level stuff where things had the potential to be very, very broken very, very quickly. This card, so keeping all that in mind, I think that this card is the worst designed card in the set. It, it's pretty hard to cast. It's a bad cancel in most aspects because blue, red, and a cancel usually like is in sort of the C range. So blue, red for a cancel, we'd put that card probably in the D. That's just like something where it's just not very good. But if you flip that coin and you succeed at that coin flip, then your opponent is in a lot of trouble because not only have you gained card advantage by stealing their creature, but also you have gained tempo advantage because your opponent didn't get to play a creature this turn, and you got their creature, and it was probably a pretty good creature. So yeah, this card makes me feel like there's like a sixth player archetype out there that like only wants to gamble and make people feel pain. If you're wondering their name, it's Andy, because they liked the anti mechanic and they want it to come back. It's horrible. It's broken. I will play 7 copies. I think it's very, very strong. I have to give it a C because the range is so ridiculous. Like, I think you don't usually want to play this, but every time you win the flip, it is just game breaking. And like, you don't really want to gamble in a draft format where you can basically, you have to lose 3 but need to win 7. So like, it's really hard to rank this card highly, even though it is just absurdly busted. I love it. It's awful. I hope you never win a flip. And I think I will pick it pretty often, honestly. All right. Generatorium. Blue-red, if you would get 1 or more energy counters, you get that many counters plus 1 instead, which is delightful. Lovely little thing to be having on an artifact. Tap, draw a card, activate only if you paid or lost for more energy this turn. So you have to pay the energy to get the card, which I think is probably the thing that makes this like a little bit lower for me. This is one of the coolest energy cards. Energy is generally pretty strong, and you always need more of it than the card is providing. Very frequently, a lot of the creatures are going to be like, oh yeah, I can spend 1 energy, or well, I can spend 3 energy, but I only give you 2. Or there's like a bunch of other stuff where it's like, oh yeah, if you have like this extra bit of energy, then you can do some really wild things. Like your ether spikes can counter a little bit harder, your creatures can just get a little bit bigger. If you have the ability, if you have an Izzet Generatorium and a creature that generates 2 energy counters and a Golem generator, you have a Golem every turn. There's just stuff like that that is like, yeah, it's kind of neat. It's definitely a combo card though, so I think that I would probably only give it a C. I currently have it like a B minus, but I think I missed the fact that it wasn't when you've gained 4 energy. It's just when you paid or lost 4 energy. So as a result, I think that that is something that like doesn't trigger that often, and therefore the card draw is frequently not going to come into play, it might come into play at least once, which is going to replace the card, but you're still going to lose a little bit of tempo. The extra energy gained will make up for that, but yeah, all of that is to say that this is probably a C. It's not really doing enough. It could even be a D, like it's just not really likely to be good in your hand most of the time. So steer mostly clear this one, but I think it's potentially pretty interesting if you are already in energy, and it's probably worth a pick in that case. All right, Jyoti Moag Ancient. 2 green blue, 2/4. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 green forest dryad land creature token for each time you cast your commander from the command zone this game. At the beginning of each combat, land creatures you control get +X/+X until end of turn, or X is Jyoti's power. I'm starting to wonder about my filters. This is filtered for play boosters, so I assume this is in the set. Okay, so it's 4 mana for 2/4. Neither of the other abilities activate ever. This is an F. It does not have the stat line, and the abilities don't work. So I think it's pretty much non-functional. If you got the Green Forest Dryad for playing it, then that would be fine because you'd get a 3/3 on top of your 4 cost. But as a commander, I don't think this, I don't think this does anything. It's notable that there are some draft cards in here for commander, which is kind of nice, but also, it's going to be very weird if this card shows up in Arena. I will say it will probably run very, very late. It's always interesting to see a rare wheel this late. All right. I feel like I must be misreading something about this card. Let me know in the comments if that's the case. Now we're going to talk about something that I actually do know about. Kaalia of the Vast, a card that I actually ran a commander deck around way, way back in the day. It was my last commander deck, one of the only ones that I ever built, actually. And I always really liked it. That being said, would I play it in Limited? Okay, so 1 red, white, black, legendary creature human cleric. It's got flying. Whenever it attacks an opponent, you can put an angel, demon, or dragon creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking that opponent. Okay, so there are some good dragons in this format. Let's get the numbers real quick, or at least the numbers that I know of. There are 5 to 6 angels, there are 2 demons, and there are about 4 dragons. There are 2 uncommon angels, there's 1 common dragon. The common dragon is quite good, so you'd be pretty okay playing that off of Kaalia, and that's potentially a decent amount. Overall, I'd say that is potentially enough to support this kind of a thing. A 2/2 flyer for 4 is not an amazing rate, but a 2/2 body is something that can do work. It will eventually need to get removed. Your opponent will eventually have to spend something on it, or have a particular answer to it, or it'll slowly whittle your opponent down. And in addition, because it represents such a threat in the air, your opponent is pretty likely to spend a removal on it, which is something that's going to raise it up a little bit, in my opinion. The card okay. So this card, what else is going on? Angel of the Ruins is uncommon. It's a 5/7, and it costs 7 normally, but also it has plane cycling, so it's pretty likely to be in your deck, and you're reasonably likely to be able to pick multiples of it, just because if you have too many of them, you can always cycle one out to get planes, which also helps you fix for Kaalia. That's pretty cool. The 3 colors is a little easier to support than normal, but black has a lot of monocolor wants, so black in this color pairing does make that a little bit more awkward. The one thing that I think Kaalia really, really has going for it is that haste is pretty good in this format. If you're in white and red, there are, I think, 3 possible haste effects that you can use that don't require extra mana, so it's possible to play this card on 4, attack in, and drop a pretty big dragon or demon very, very early. That can be devastating, particularly if you're getting something like Sheglingath? The demon that sacrifices angels. Sheglingar, I think is what it's called. Or if you're just getting the angel that exiles an artifact, all of these are potentially pretty interesting. You don't get the summon effect for them, I believe, because you're putting the card into play attacking. You also don't get attack triggers for them. You only get combat damage triggers. All things that are important to note, because Kaalia is a surprisingly disappointing card in commander decks for some of these reasons. But I think that nonetheless, playing a very big creature off of this is enough of a tempo swing that it will probably win the game. Your opponent's not terribly likely to ignore this card, so it's probably going to at least draw removal. And a 2/2 flyer in the air is not so bad that I would say that it's going to be unplayable. I'd give this a C+. That is generous to Kaalia, to be sure, but nonetheless, I think it's a pretty interesting card in the format, and it is pretty well supported. There's a cool land that gives haste, there's a cool goblin that gives haste at common, and there's plenty of good fixing and a couple of really decent angels and demons. I think the dragon you're most likely to play off this is the 2 red one that's a 3/2 and gives you a bunch of energy, so all of that's pretty lovely. I'd say that's wonderful. Oh, it does trigger summon effects. I don't know what I'm talking about. All right, anyways, Kudo, King Among Bears. Green white for a 2/2. Other creatures have base power and toughness 2/2 and are bears in addition to their other type. We talk about bears a lot. It's just the common joke of Magic that any 2/2 for 2 is a bear, and obviously this one does not change that fact. So this is a 2/2 bear, which already, yeah, that's fine. That's pretty good on rate. It's green white, which does make it a little bit worse on rate. I actually think that might lower it a little bit. If you play modular creatures or aggro, then this can potentially be quite a bit of an upside, because if you're playing like a 1/2 or a 1/1 on turn 1 into a Kudo, you can start to get like some mild advantages there. And if you're playing something like Watchdog, which is a 3/3, but it's actually a 0/0, then it becomes a 2/2 bear and becomes a 5/5 when you play Kudo, which is kudos to that. This is going to be a long video, isn't it? All right, so I would say that I actually think I'd give this card like a D+. Normally, I'd give a bear a little bit higher rating than that because it fills a slot pretty well, but the main thing is that this is fairly hard to build around, and your opponent might have creatures that benefit from it. If they have some sort of modular creature, if they're in like a different archetype that's using +1/+1 counters, which is reasonably likely, like outside of your colors, I think the +1/+1 counters are a little bit more likely, then they might actually get a bigger creature as a result of you playing Kudo, and you're basically like spending a pick on a rare card to get this when you could potentially be picking up some common removal, uncommon removal, something along those lines. So like I think it can be a C-. I am pretty sure it's a D+, but obviously there are just like it is. It's really a question of whether or not it is a reliable 2-drop, and maybe that bumps it up a grade. C-, I guess. I guess it's a low C-. Okay. Anyways, Legion leadership is a land, so we're not talking about it. Hey, here we go. Nadu. I think people already know some of what I'm going to say about this. I wouldn't be surprised. 1 green-blue for a 3/4 flying. Creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand. This ability triggers only twice each turn. So it's a 1 green-blue for a 3/4 flying, which is already just an absurd stat line. Wonderful, excellent high rate bird. That's like A+ territory already, and it's got upside. And the upside is that it's when you try to remove it, you get card advantage out of it, so it's basically impossible for your opponent to come out ahead from you playing this. It works with all of your other cards, so if your opponent needs to kill like one of your other creatures that has 3 health or 2 health, and that's the creature they can kill, they have to be really careful about whether or not they can do it. It works with your cards if you play auras, if you play buffs, if you play combat tricks, notably the green one that gives like flying and death touch and reach, or is it death touch and reach, I think, and untaps. That's disgusting as well because it gives you extra card draw. Your opponent can, like, if you play this like when your opponent's tapped out, or if you play this when your opponent's tapped out and you have like a green left, or even if you just play this when you have a green left, you can put down Nadu. Your opponent can target it with a removal spell, which might be the one that deals 4 damage. You can pay a green to cast a spell at Nadu, and now you're 2 cards up, and your opponent's removal might fizzle. This card's ridiculous. It's an S. It is always going to win the game if it stays on board, because it's a big flyer that you play very efficiently early on, and then, like, it's one of the only cards where your opponent is going to want to play an Edict, but as we've covered previously, the Edicts are not very good cards in this format, so nobody's going to be playing those. And I think that, well, I don't know, people are going to be playing those, but I just don't think they're going to be playing them often enough, and I think frequently you're going to have something else to sacrifice, and that's going to be totally fine. Yeah, you know, it's a reason to have that 1 and a black 2/1, but I think you can just play around that, and everything else that it's doing is ridiculous. Spirals the game out of control pretty fully, ramps you, gives you card advantage. It's gross. Lovely, lovely card. Obstinate Gargoyle. One white black has flying as long as it's modified, and it has persist, which when this creature dies, if it had no -1, -1 counters on it, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a -1, -1 counter on it. So I just have written in my notes here in all caps, this is a design crime. Because, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if this is still the case, but generally, like, one of the things that was a hard and fast rule was that you did not mix +1/+1 counters and -1, -1 counters in the same thing, in the same set, due to the fact that it creates confusion when you're creating counters with, like, dice or other tokens. They now have, like, some cool workarounds for this, where, like, the boxes have like +1/+1 counters that flip that you can like cut out. And also people play a lot more online Magic, so the counters are not as likely to be confused. But I would say that like this is still something where it has the potential to create a lot of confusion, and like it's interesting that there's a persist card in the set. I think the reason that they did this is because persist does modify the creature, which is funny, and that's sort of it. Okay, so yeah, this is a 2/2 flyer. Oh no, it's not a 2/2 flyer. It's a 2/2 normally. It has persist, and persist is a very obnoxious mechanic. But that turns it into a 1/1. I had this at a B-, but the fact that it doesn't have flying naturally, I think, does lower it quite a bit. Yeah, no, that's actually much worse. Okay, so reconfiguring here, I think this is probably a C. It is a good blocker that turns into a 1/1 creature at the end of it, and then it's a 1/1 flyer, which is nice. Like, you can compare that to the 1 white creature that is a 1/1 that turns into a 1/1 flyer. I think that one's a little bit better in this case. Yeah, so yeah, I think this is probably just like a C-. I think the fact that you get 2 creatures out of it and you're in black means that you're reasonably happy with this, and you get a modified creature for modified creature synergy, which is also something you're trying to do in black. So yeah, seems fine, but definitely not a beautiful, wonderful card or by any means. Okay, Omo, Queen of Vesuva, 2 green, blue, or 2 and a green or blue hybrid. For a 1/5 shapeshifter noble, already that's like big. It's hard to kill. It's definitely like not trading very well, but it is potentially going to stick on board. So the question is, when it does stuff, does it do stuff? When it enters the battlefield or attacks, put an everything counter on each of up to 1 target land and 1 target creature. Each land with an everything counter on it is every land type in addition to its other types. Each non-land is with an everything counter is every creature type. So this one's a little tricky. I would say overall it's not very strong. 1/5 is a pretty bad stat line for if you aren't doing anything else with the card. 1/5 is a pretty bad stat line. Like, that's just very passive. You are just opening yourself up to like bad trades. You will be blocking with this against like aggressive stuff, which is important, but eventually a 2/2 bear is gonna like just lightning bolt this thing, and yeah, that's sort of the end of it. So like that's like probably enough to get it like a D, just because it's like good at stalling the board out. But the ability really isn't doing a lot. The only thing it's really doing is triggering Eldrazi synergies in this format, and I don't think that is necessarily there. So yeah. As far as it goes, I am not particularly fond of this one. I think it's a D. It's just not doing enough, and you do have to kind of invest in it. At least it is green or blue and not a green and a blue. That does make it easier to play. All right. Undo Not Master, 2 white black. You first throw a line, or you don't have to, but you usually first throw a line, which is a sorcery, adventure, distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures. Then you exile the card, and you can cast the creature later from exile. The creature is a 2/2 lifelink, and whenever another modified creature you control dies, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on Undo Not Master. So throw a line is a reasonable sorcery. It's not like amazing, but +1/+1 that you get to distribute to 2 different creatures to modify them means you can start setting up those synergies, and you're going to feel kind of okay about that. There are better rates on this, but I would say that like being able to split the counters does make it at least worth it. That's going to put it in like the C territory. The creature is obviously a much additional upside. It's going to definitely bump it up to at least a C plus. Does it get better than that? I don't know. Creature's a 2/2 lifelink, which is not that great. The ability doesn't trigger it that often, but there are some ways that you can trigger it. However, they kind of nullify the advantage of Throw the Line. The main thing I'm thinking of is if you have 2 Eldrazi creature tokens, you can put 2+1/+1 counters on it, and then you can play the world's weirdest 4/4 for 4. At that point, it'll be a pretty big creature with lifelink, and you're still going to be kind of happy with it. But overall, I think that like the division between the sorcery and the creature is a little awkward. The creature is not a thing you're going to want to play as much, and while it does provide 2 cards for 1 value, I can only really put this at a C+, just because the rate is a little bit awkward in both cases. All right, Flage. I guess it's like a discount phage? No, it's a Titan of Fire's Fury. 1 red, white, 6/6. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage to any target, and you gain 3 life. Ooh, good stuff. All right. So, so this is really interesting. It is 3 cost for a 3 damage bolt that gains you 3 life, which is pretty excellent. I think right away that's really, really strong. And then, in addition, you can escape with it to get that same effect again, and that's going to be pretty cool because you also get a 6/6 on top of that. The escape is 4, which is easy enough, although exiling 5 other cards from your graveyard means this probably doesn't come out on turn 4. In fact, it very, very likely does not come out on turn 4. But nonetheless, I think like in a long game, you can potentially play Flage like 3 times. Once as a like normal little like bolt, and then after that again as a 6/6, and then potentially after that one more time to kind of close things out. I'd call this an A-. I think it is just pretty good removal with an excellent creature attached, and the fact that it can hit your opponent's face is really important. Any target is just like exactly the kind of thing you want to see on a 3-cost card like this, because you can just win the game with it sometimes, and that's awesome. All right, Planar Genesis. This is green-blue for a instant. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You can put a land from among them onto the battlefield tapped. If you don't, you put a card from among them into your hand. You put the rest on bottom of your library in a random order. So automatically get your land and ramp. It's like a rampant growth in that aspect. And it also kind of filters, but not really. I think you always get to... Oh, actually, no, it does kind of filter, because you look at the top 4, but then you don't reorganize them. But if you don't put a land... Oh no! If you don't, you still have to do the other thing. So yeah, I think it's fine. Yeah, this is overall pretty okay. You are getting like some ramp out of it. It is getting you potentially a card if you want to, and that's like just fine if we want to make your deck a little smaller or trigger like some draw effects. I'd say overall this is fairly limited in the positions that it is good, but it can help you get out of bad land situations, and it can help activate some synergies while also it's really not harming you that much. I'd say overall this is a C. It's not doing anything particularly strong, but there are definitely situations where you might want it, particularly if you're trying to select a very specific land. It's not necessarily going to get that card, but it's going to help you get that card, so that's nice. Psychic Frog, blue and a black for a 1/2. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, draw a card. You can discard a card to put a +1/+1 counter on it, and you exile 3 cards from your graveyard to give it flying until end of turn. Water Break. Okay. So, this is a pretty spiky card in some weird ways. Like, it's definitely, like, doing some weird trade for value, like, try to get the exact lethal thing going on. It's kind of Johnny too, but it's just, like, a lot of unusual things and a lot of very good effects on a very small creature for a very small cost. So, really interesting things going on. I'd say this card can get in there pretty often and basically has to be dealt with. Like, the amount of time that it can actually draw cards is pretty excellent, and also like the fact that it can always as a trick become a modified creature permanently is pretty interesting. Sometimes you just are pretty willing to pay 0 and a card for a +1/+1 counter at instant speed. The exile ability allows you to consistently hit in with it, but you also have to be like discarding more cards for that. So like that potentially like limits the strength of it a lot. These cards have been like a little less powerful over time as people have started to realize how commonly they are used. But I think this is still a B minus. I think it's very good at potentially like doing a lot of different things and spiraling the game out of control, and it makes it really hard for your opponent to ever tap out, and your opponent really wants to tap out. So like that's something that's like kind of important. And it's just something where your opponent is always kind of like, it's going to make your opponent have pause, and you are going to get a lot of potential advantage out of it, as well as the ability to just do a lot of interesting tricks. Kind of creates this decision paralysis that's really, really difficult. Yeah, I think it's a B minus. It could go a little bit lower than this, but these cards are most evaluated on the board. I think overall, though, yeah, it's just doing too many things that are pretty strong. Pyretic Rebirth, 2 black red, return target artifact or creature card from your graveyard to your hand. It deals damage equal to that card's mana value to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. Right away, pretty good stuff. I like this a lot because it actually gets rid of a threat on board, which is the thing that you most want to do, while also giving you a card back. So it's basically card advantage every time, and if you're getting a big creature back, you can do some very nasty things to a lot of things that need to die. So overall, this is probably a B. I think it's just good, playable, easy to use, and certainly quite happy. Revitalizing Repast goes into the land pile, so let's go to Riddlegate Gargoyle. White-blue for a 2/2 flying. When it enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy counters. That's great. When you attack, you can pay 2 energy to give a creature you control lifelink until the end of turn. I think that's pretty excellent. It's a B minus. 2/2 flyer for 2 is amazing. It's a little tricky to play, but that's fine. The energy spend is actually quite good because giving lifelink to like a creature on the ground that's much bigger than Riddlegate Gargoyle is quite powerful. And even then, like if you're spending it just on the Riddlegate Gargoyle, it's a little underwhelming. But lifelink can win flying races under some circumstances, so it's okay. Rasheen, Roaring Prophet. 2 red-green, 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, you mill 6 cards. You can put a card with X in its mana cost from among them into your hand. Tap, reveal any number of cards with X in their mana cost in your hand. You can add 2 colorless mana for each card revealed this way, and then spend this mana only on costs that contain X. So it doesn't fix for colorless, it just helps you with that X, which is, certainly fine. Okay, so overall, that's pretty interesting. Oh, it's kind of interesting here that it specifically specifies that it is colorless only mana because the cost has to contain X. Okay, yeah, I get it. Yeah, so 4/4/4/4 seems pretty lovely. The mill 6 can be kind of bad if you pull it late, and this is kind of a like late-ish format, but there's much less mill in the format than you would expect, and there's a decent amount of stuff that actually cares about you having stuff in your graveyard to play around with, so I don't think that's particularly bad to see. And yeah, having to build around X cards is the main reason why this card doesn't get like too high of a value, but there are a few okay ones in green, and I think there's a couple of good ones in red as well. The green ones include a common creature that you can play, and that's kind of awesome, so I'd probably give this card a B minus. It's just always good, Satya Aether Flux Genius. 1 blue, red, white. So those are energy colors. Menace, haste. Whenever it attacks, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of up to 1 other target non-token creature you control. You get 2 energy. At the beginning of the next end step, sacrifice that token unless you pay an amount of energy equal to its mana value. So when it attacks, you get a copy of your creature that's also attacking, and you also have menace and haste on this thing. So you play it for 4, it's a 3/5 menace haste. Which means it gets in that turn, and it probably gets in the next turn too, honestly. So yeah, I think this card's pretty strong. 3/5 menace for haste is a really strong starting line. You're pretty happy about that. It's just excellent. You're not guaranteed to get the bonus ability because you do have to have another creature down, but it's reasonably likely that you are going to get it because your opponent's not necessarily going to be prepared for your 4-drop to have this much out the gate value. once you actually get the token, you get to hit with it immediately, get all of the benefit you need out of it. You don't really need to keep the token by paying energy. I think the only reason you'd want to do that is if you have no other like particular place to spend that energy. So if you're making a bear attack in, then like this thing is hitting for 5 on turn 4. That's pretty amazing. Even if you're not like doing that, hitting for 3 on turn 4 and having this creature that is just like pretty hard to kill is great. I'd give this card probably a B plus. It doesn't really win the game on its own most of the time. I'll give it an A minus. I think it is just like excellent enough that you're always very likely to pick it. So yeah, cool. Scoria Gremlins. 2 red white for an enchantment that creates 2 1/1 red gremlin creature tokens, and then you get an amount of energy equal to the number of creatures you control. You can pay 4 energy to give creatures you control +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. Notably, one of those synergies with Kaalia I was mentioning, where you have this one and the land and the goblin. So like all of those will potentially give you a free haste effect on a bigger creature, which is certainly kind of lovely. That being said, I still think this card is maybe like a D plus, unless you're playing it in like some very specific haste plan deck or a particular energy deck that really cares about having a wide board of creatures. So Scurry Gremlins can get you a lot of energy for 4, but 4 is also a lot to be paying for energy. It gives you some cheapish blockers, which is a nice little bonus, and also will always give you at least 2 energy, but if you're playing this onto an empty board, you're not going to feel very happy about it. It's potentially like quite iffy. You're going to be down card advantage while also like trying to get a finisher so that you can get that like bonus haste and actually do stuff like that. This is a card that is best when you're ahead because you have to pay a bunch of energy, but because you are playing an enchantment that isn't getting a lot onto the board, you're going to be behind when you play it. So it's really hard to get into a position where you can really actively use that haste ability. That being said, it can pull some surprise lethals. It's definitely not an effort by any means. I think it is playable. I've even seen the card see some play, but I'm just like not fully convinced by it. Snapping Voidcraw, 1 green blue for a 1/3. That's a little better than a 3/4 flyer. Devoid, tap to add 2 colorless mana, 3 and a colorless to draw a card. You also have to tap it there. So yeah, a 1/3 is not really all that playable, but the card can potentially like draw you into some better stuff, which is neat. Being able to have a consistent card draw engine does feel okay. Sometimes you want to play the slow control game, and a small creature that can do that is kind of a helpful thing, particularly since it can also block 2/2s and kind of keep the board in an okay position. I'll give this like a C. I think it's a solid control card, and the fact that it's so poor in aggro means you're not playing it all the time. Sneaky Snacker, blue-black for a 2/1. When you draw your 3rd card in a turn, you return Sneaky Snacker from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So 2/1 flyer for 2 is pretty excellent. You're going to feel pretty happy about that. You might want like a 2/2, but that's not actually a big deal here. I don't think there's barely anything that just pings a 1 health creature. I'd say overall a 2/1 flyer is pretty indifferent to a 2/2 in that respect. So yeah, it's great, it's fast, it's super awesome, and then it gives you card advantage with your advantage. I really like these effects. I think that all of these like draw 3 effects are particularly strong because what they do is they give you the ability to create board presence while doing nothing, and that can create some really powerful board states. Yeah, this card's really strong, and I think I'm going to give it a B minus. Overall, it's just doing some great stuff, and blue-black's pretty much always going to want it. Okay, 2 more lands, and then we get into the... I have Stump Stomp in here still. Okay. Oh, 3 more lands. Suppression Ray as well. Okay. Let's talk about the Necro Bloom. Okay, 1 white, black, green. Landfall... Oh, it's a 2/7. Another card that I think I misread when I was doing my initial notes, because it sure looked like a 2/2 to me. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 0/1 green plant creature token. If you control 7 or more lands with different names, you create a black zombie creature token instead. 2/7 is hard to kill. That is going to stick. And when it sticks, it's also going to create a bunch of other blockers for every single land that you have, as well as creating like some sacrifice tokens in white, black, and green. Land cards in your graveyard have dredge 2, which means you can return a land from your graveyard to your hand and mill 2 cards instead of drawing a card. Mostly just a way to like put some stuff into your discard pile, but not anything that's like going to be completely sick. I think overall, like the main thing I'm not hugely interested in this card. I don't think it's extremely worth going into 3 colors for, but the consistent source of tokens that it's generating is kind of neat, and overall, I think that's something that like can be kind of good. You don't really start getting those tokens until like turn 5, so that's kind of a problem, particularly since the plants are not particularly great, and you need like a number of different interesting lands in order to get that 2/2 zombie. The dredge is not very well supported. I don't think I can give this higher than like a C minus, despite that 2/7 stat line, which is sure interesting. But I think it's just too vulnerable to like just being hard removed and then not being actually all that valuable on board. I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's a C. It is definitely playable, and it's yeah, you're never unhappy to play this. It's just that building around it is very tricky, and so you're not going to get that much advantage out of those plant tokens unless you're playing Deep Sacrifice, which you might be. Okay, Titan's Vanguard, 3 red green for a 5/5, devoid. When you cast a spell and whenever it attacks, yay, love that particular piece of text. Put a +1/+1 counter on each colorless creature you control. It's trample, but it's a 6/6 for 5, which, my goodness, 6/6/5. 6/6 trample for 5 is sure a beating. It's a 6/6 trample for 5 that grows up, so it becomes a 7/7 on attack, and it also buffs everything else you have that's got devoid. So it's pretty insane, particularly if you can give it haste, which you can. I'm gonna give this an A minus. I think it's just an amazing uncommon for what it's doing, and red green is there's a whole archetype that just plays a bunch of these guys. Ulalek. Fused Atrocity. I mean, that suggests that Ulamog and Kozilek are fusing, which, sure. It's a devoid 2/5. Whenever you cast an Eldrazi spell, you may pay 2 colorless mana. If you do, copy all spells you control, then copy all other activated and triggered abilities you control. You may choose new targets for the copies. So this is like this is a lot right here. The colorless hybrid for each of the 5 colors is the thing that is most difficult about this card in terms of evaluation, because like you are now paying all 6 colors, but you only have to pay some of them, and if you have like a lot of colorless, then you can be in like 2 different colors and play Ulalek, and that's kind of interesting. So yeah, you probably want a lot of colorless mana for this anyways. I think this is probably around a 4-color card most of the time, but sometimes you can play it for like, 2 colors, and that's going to feel pretty good because you're also going to be able to pay that 2 colorless when you play an Eldrazi spell. Okay. So I believe this copies every other permanent you control, because it's all spells you control, which is an insane effect that is absolutely going to do some horrible, horrible nonsense. And it also copies all activated and triggered abilities you control, which they don't have to be like on the stack, I think. You just trigger them. That's a pretty game-winning thing to do from casting an Eldrazi, but you have to play the 2/5, and then you have to stick an Eldrazi after that, which is probably going to be like a 7-drop, and pay 2 colorless on top of that. It's possible to play cheaper Eldrazi and get pretty good with this. This is definitely a combo card by those means. I think I give this a C+. I think it is a must-kill, but really hard to play. And the fact that you need an Eldrazi spell, not an Eldrazi token, to trigger it, along with the colorless mana, means that it's asking so much for that game-winning effect. So yeah, that probably only puts it at like a C+, but I mean, obviously this is an S anytime that it goes off, because as long as you are like even reasonably in possession of a board state, you're gonna feel pretty happy about it. And like, I mean, if you play an Eldrazi, you still get to copy, I believe, that Eldrazi as well. Yeah, no, hot nonsense. All pretty amazing. Okay, White of the Reliquary. This is a black-green. It's a signpost card for those colors. So 2/2 Vigilance. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. 1 second. Let's gather ourselves. Here we go. 2/2 Vigilance. Gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your graveyard, which is amazing. You can sack another creature to search your library for a land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. Oh, this is pretty awesome. You get a 2/2 that grows up pretty well, and just from doing like all the things that you're normally doing, which is playing creatures and attacking with them. This is going to be a pretty big creature at a good creature on rate at pretty much any point in the game if you're playing a creature heavy deck. So yeah, feels pretty solid. I give this like a B-. I think it's got some good love for all of the weird mill that you're playing, and the fact that you can sacrifice like tokens for land cards feels pretty exciting. Overall, like this is something that you can do quite a bit with, and it ramps you into bigger Eldrazi while also allowing you to create a very big white, which sure feels nice. Writhing Chrysalis, 4/5 for 4, and you can play a 2-drop, which is to say it's 1, 2, 3, 4 for a 2/3. When you cast a spell, you create 2/0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature tokens with sacrifice this creature, add a colorless mana, which means you can play a bear immediately after it. So turn 4, drop a 2/3, turn it into a 4/5, play a colorless bear. It's devoid, it has a reach, and whenever you sacrifice another Eldrazi, you put a +1/+1 counter on Writhing Chrysalis. So, that is potentially pretty interesting. I would say overall there's a ton of flexibility in stats on this card. The amount of value it is providing is ridiculous. This is a high B to an A-. It's incredible for a common, to be sure. Definitely up there. Okay. That's all of the multicolor cards. We're at 1:15, so I think we're going to release the colorless video alongside this one. We're going to do colorless lands and multicolor all at the same time, so the next video should be available in your queue right now. See you then. Cheers!